partnership, but in Africa. So I will just talk about the project, its evolution, and the key partnerships and how we worked around it. First of all, the 3 C's, I've heard that a lot of times: the climate, the COVID, climate, and conflict as the 3 C's. And cassava stands strong to talk when it stands tall when you talk about those 3 C's. 500 million people depend on this crop daily for their food, for their calories. Africa farmers produce more than half the world's cassava, and it's a hardy crop. So when you talk about climate, it's hardy. When you talk about conflict, it's also hardy in terms of where other crops will fail. Cassava will be able to stand back in terms of you can store it in the ground. You don't need to manage. It's not high intensive management like other crops like we know that will fail in such situations. But more importantly is that it's grown by farmers. The vulnerable people depend on this crop. They are the ones that process it, that grow it, that market it. So we take that as an important part of the development work we do. Next Gen Cassava is aimed at empowering farmers through innovative, sustainable cassava breeding. You can see the partners to the right, and many partners, 13 institutional partners from 4 continents, but all are focused. The work is focused on solving food security, providing food security using cassava in Africa. So the target focus is Africa, but beyond the 13 organizations, there are 7 others, and that is important to highlight here because we call them the community of practice partnerships. This project is coordinated by Cornell, but IITA, the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, has a lead role, being the main CG center that is involved in this. Vivian also mentioned something around demand-led breeding, and we saw the beautiful book. I've also read it. I have a copy. So we created the project into 3 different divisions. We call them divisions for sake of nomenclature, but it's all about breeding as the center. But we have what we call the breeding research, the tools and the protocols, fine-tuning them to make for more efficient breeding. And then we talked, Vivian talked about product profiles. She talked about preferences and needs. This is going beyond the breeders alone, using social scientists, food scientists, data scientists to partner, to be able to work together to develop new varieties that you can give to the client, to the farmer, to the marketer. So I'm going to mention a few key partnerships. Remember, I said that the Cornell University so far has been the coordinating center. And we recognize it as an advanced research institute. Harold mentioned about national programs, CG centers, and advanced research institutes. So in this case, we have Cornell as one of our key advanced research institutes. For Cornell, project management was the key. It was one of the things we did, but also the breeding research, genomic selection, genetic mapping, improved flowering techniques, and capacity building for African scientists was one of the some of the things that Cornell provided. Inside of Cornell is another organization called the Boyce Thompson Institute. We work together to develop a database called Cassava Base, and Cassava Base is not just for a repository of data. It is a digital ecosystem for cassava breeding data management. You can do your trial design, field design in this ecosystem. You can do selection, and you can also store data. To date, we are running up to 20 million data points and nearly 5,000, moving towards 5,000 trials, over 1,000 users from 22 programs. So even though we have 13 organizations, in fact, not all 13 are breeding programs, but we have 22 breeding programs from across the world that have deposited data and are using Cassava Base. We have an institute in Germany, Leibniz Institute, is a reference lab for diagnostics and phytosanitary screening. So you know that cassava is in South America as the center of origin, and a lot of cultivation is in Africa. So to do safe intercontinental germplasm exchange, we need a reference lab that is that has a good reputation. So we are using DSMZ for short, German Institute in Braunschweig, and we use them to move materials across the continents. And they've done a beautiful job in screening materials for viruses in particular, but also for other pathogens. But we've used this agency to be able to move germplasm that is resistant to virus diseases in Africa to Southeast Asia, because Southeast Asia does not have resistance to this virus, but we have resistance in Africa, and so we're able to use this as a leverage point to do that. We also work with our partners in Embrapa, Brazil, and they do pre-breeding for Africa. So a lot of germplasm exchange and the use of genomic selection to do work. But come to the key partners in the CG centers: IITA, International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, and the International Center for Tropical Agriculture in Colombia, now called Biosafety, and the International Center for Tropical Agriculture. And we work with them as a key people. For example, IITA is a model breeding pipeline and provides examples and backstopping to guide the national programs in Africa. And we work primarily with 3 national programs, one in Nigeria, one in Uganda, and Tanzania as our main national program partners. And we've been able to work with them to release the first set of next-gen improved varieties in Africa that use genomic selection. For CIAT, they also provide germplasm support, genetic diversity for desirable traits, improved flowering, and application of genomic selection to make for better varieties. Talking about the national programs, Harold mentioned about the 1CG National Program and Advanced Research Institute. So these are our key research institutes in Nigeria, NRCRI, which I happen to now be leading, and NACRI in Uganda, and TARI in Tanzania. So we also have what we call citizen science research, whereby we use these models to identify winning varieties or winning traits, as the case may be, for varieties in Nigeria. For example, we have the triadic comparison of technologies that we use by farmers. So we work with farmers and breeders to select the best variety. For example, in Nigeria, we work with 320 farmers in the last 2 years. Each farmer gets 3 varieties, but we are evaluating like 30 varieties, but each farmer gets not more than 3 varieties, where they can say best and worst, and then the middle. And by some simple analysis, you'll be able to select the best varieties based on preferences, which is really the practical aspect of demand-led breeding. We know that we're building capacity at the national programs. Again, the CG Center supporting, or the Advanced Research Institute supporting in terms of data capture or data management or high throughput phenotyping. The breeder needs to work with a lot of numbers, and also to evaluate root quality traits. So cassava is a root crop, so you need to be, to give serious attention to the quality of the roots for palatability and all that. So we have what we call non-left behind. I had that again when you talk about partnerships, non-left behind, next gen's community of practice. So I mentioned the 3 countries in Nigeria, Uganda, and Tanzania, but we have 7 other countries: Rwanda, Zambia, Ghana, that we did not spend a lot of money on like we spent on the other ones. We call it spoke the hub approach, but we share learnings and resources. We do peer-to-peer visits. We exchange germplasm, especially of elite lines or of seedlings, and we support them in field management, trial design, and data analysis and data management, and be able to help them through with limited resources. And so we are scaling out our approach in that regard. Thank you again, Vivian, when you mentioned so many students. So this is one of the, we've had several students trained in the University of Ghana, West Africa Center for Crop Improvement, and the Makerere University, where we have the Makerere Regional Program for Center for Crop Improvement. And so far, in the last 9 years, we've been able to train 37 graduate students, most of them PhD students. we believe in training the next generation of plant breeders through our project. And some of these people, or most of them actually, have now graduated and they have joined the national program, some IITA in Nigeria or some in Uganda, and they are now scientists, young scientists doing breeding and using the modern tools that Vivian mentioned about. Talking about breeding, we talk breeding and the science of breeding, but we also know that the variety is important. So we've been able to release 5 varieties in Nigeria. 4 of them were developed through genomic approaches, and they were not just released, they were released according to the product profile that Vivian mentioned, that this one is good for fresh use, this one is good for granulated product, and this other one is good for industrial use. So we've released those varieties, and we have more coming in Uganda, 3 in Uganda and 3 in Tanzania in late this year. So in a few months, we may have this slight change that we have for Nigeria. Cassava is a vegetatively propagated crop, just like other roots and tuber crops. So one ratio of 1 to 5 is a multiplication ratio, which is very poor compared to grains, that is 1 to 300. So we have this going on where we have rapid multiplication of new varieties. And we've adopted a new technology called the semi-autotrophic hydroponics. And we've also started working with, off-takers projects and seed companies that are dedicated to cassava, not just grains, because you don't see seed companies that are very interested in vegetatively propagated crops. So we have IITA Go Seeds and Umudike Go Seeds, public-private owned, and we have them also in Tanzania. So why has NextGen been successful? It's successful because it's a cohesive group. First of all, we try to understand ourselves. We had a lot of meetings before we started, but we also collaborative, open-minded, to the point that everybody feels very free to deposit their data in the database without any issues. We also treated, there was a treatment between the CG and the NAS and the Advanced Research Institutes as co-equals. Nobody is bigger than the other. And that was because everybody was fighting or working for the common good. That was very important. Another thing we did to have our partnership was we brought in very good external advisors. We brought them from the industry. For example, one from Syngenta, another from Cortiva, and another one from, is it Inera? Some other, I can't remember the company in the US, but also from CG centers and from national program, and then some from the private sector, so from farmers. So we, last slide. So we pride ourselves as the flagship model for flagship breeding program for the 1CG. The 1CG is starting a new RTB cross-breeding project, which will be the new investment after NextGen. And we've already done this. We've modeled that project after NextGen because NextGen presents itself as a partnership model for CG, NAS, and ARI for breeding. We've also learned how to outsource high-end research to the advanced institutes, and cost-effective and sustainable sharing of services has already been demonstrated in NextGen. And we've also shown how to work with the last mile delivery, making sure that the varieties we develop are going to the farmers. A lot of people are involved, and I don't have time to acknowledge all of them, but I thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rosie. Very nice presentation, highlighting that importance of different kind of partnerships. And I think this is one of those success stories we really appreciate, and congratulations to your leadership. So, and again, wish you all the best for your new role as a CEO of that National Root Crop Research Institute. I'm sure I will be visiting you very soon. Thank you.
Very well. Welcome. Thank you.
And as we were hearing from the highest level, from the CGIR and the AGRF Agra, and also from the Syngenta Foundation perspective, APARI, and then we went to a particular project level at the NextGen Cassava. So you could see that how this kind of partnership is required to deliver to the specific output of the project. But in all these things, we also saw that I think that capacity building and having the next generation scientist is very much required. And for this purpose, we have invited Dr. Liz Korsten. She is the co-director for the Center of Excellence in Food Security coming from the University of Pretoria, heavily engaged with the African Academy of Sciences, who are also co-organizer of this session. So I'm sure that Liz is going to share some of our views on that pupil partnership and practices. Welcome, Liz, and the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Rajiv. And last but not least, I want to just say welcome, good afternoon and good evening to our friends and colleagues and stakeholders all over the world, but all participating in this extremely important dialogue, how to feed a very fragile and to me almost a broken world. And I want to focus on three aspects: people, partnerships, and practices. And I'm just going to share with you some examples from the African continent, transcending from people, planet, and profit. So in this context, I just quickly want to move my slides. There we are. I want to first start with an example of RU Forum, which is, of course, our regional universities forum for capacity building in agriculture. So if we talk about developing people and human capital for resilient food systems, I think this is a classic example. RU Forum will have their AGM in December, and they have two extremely important events. One is really about strengthening human capital development in Africa. And the second will be future frontiers for global collaboration and partnerships in higher education and research. Now, let me just take one step back and take you to the vision of RU Forum. And it's really their Vision 2030 is about a vibrant, transformative universities catalyzing sustainable, inclusive agricultural development to feed and create prosperity for Africa. They are busy building the Africa we want. They've already contributed significantly to training masters and PhDs, awarding post-research grants, establishing very strong networks with the African Union and international partners. And I think that's a very important example for us in Africa. I then want to move over to the African Academy of Sciences. And as you are aware, it was established in 1985 by 34 founding fellows. And this is really to honor the African leadership. And we have 25 Nobel laureates that's been born in Africa. And today we have more than 650 fellows. That's really reflecting on the excellence and the research capacity on the continent and the talent that we have. But very importantly for the African Academy of Science is to build the next generation of young leaders, and keeping in mind that the African Academy of Science is a non-aligned, non-political, not-for-profit Pan-African organization with a vision to transform lives in Africa. And that through science supported through the African Union, several governments and international partners. So the tripartite mandate is to recognize excellence through, of course, extremely prestigious fellowships and award schemes, to provide advisory and think tank functions, and to implement, very importantly, these science, technology, and innovation programs to address Africa's development challenges. They've got postdoctoral fellowships program, but the one I want to focus on today is the Arise Fellowship Program. It's recently, we had our kickoff meeting in June this year, and we have awarded 45 researchers from 38 African countries these Arise Fellowships, which is really about building capacity in African researchers, focusing on early career scientists that will deliver cutting edge research, and they will contribute towards the transformation of Africa. So it's really not only about improving the capabilities of emerging African early career researchers, but to strengthen institutional research management and support systems. And of course, to work through cutting edge research and drive transformation through a knowledge base and innovative-led continent. So these to me are very important examples where things are being implemented, developed, and a strong network established. But there is other partnerships. I'm just listing one, the Global Network for Local Impact. It's the Resilient Food Systems, where international funding for agricultural development is actually moved into different African countries, literally making a local impact. So global networks for local impact. And they also provide, for instance, food systems knowledge centers. In this case, their mission is to foster sustainability and resilience in food security and to contribute to that paradigm shift within agriculture. So to me, these are important partnerships, and we've already heard several important presentations this morning. I want to take you into practices, and from a practices point of view, I'm more focusing on ideas and concepts and how we apply these new technologies, integrate them, and create these transdisciplinary frontiers. And one example is the One Health Commission, and looking at resilient food systems. And we are all familiar with the sectors and disciplines in terms of environment, animal, and human, how we have to integrate that with society at a regional, global, local and national level, including rural, urban, and of course, looking at inclusivity, equity, and access. So it is the communication, the collaboration, the coordination, and capacity building. So we are talking about healthy animals, healthy humans, and healthy ecosystems. But my question is, where's plant health? And why is that not more prominent within the One Health context? And I know it's classified and grouped under healthy ecosystems, but plant health contribute towards sustainable, resilient food systems. And I feel this is extremely important context that should be put and placed in the middle of this. And I'm going to use one example. And I'll be honest, I'm proudly a plant pathologist. In fact, I believe that practical plant pathologists work towards a resilient, sustainable food systems. And I believe they need to be afforded a more prominent seat within the global debates. I want to give you one example. In 1998, we had the International Society for Plant Pathology, our international conference. And during this conference, the Nobel Peace Laureate, Dr. Norman Borlaug, gave a presentation, and he actually challenged our society. And he said, in the light of the global challenge in terms of feeding more than 800 million people that actually do not have enough food, and he was referring also to the impact of pests and pathogens and how it's reducing our crops, increasing losses and waste. And he referred to figures of over 10%. And I asked myself, 25 years later, what has happened? Well, our World Hunger Index increased. And the most important, if I look at some of the statistics, and I'm using just one example, if I'm talking about more than 40% estimated losses at a crop level, crop production level. So to me, this brings biosecurity to the fore, and it places plant health in the middle with food security. And if we're going to develop sustainable food systems, we must ensure healthy plants. So extremely important is that this society has established the Food Security Journal that, as you know, is one of the most prominent journals globally. We have also established a task force, and in August, we will have our international conference next year, One Health for All Plants. And that to me is extremely important event. I want to end by focusing on some practices for resilient food systems. And I'm going to give an example of our Center of Excellence Food Security in South Africa. where we are looking at the paradox to food systems challenges. And we're obviously looking at the South African context of historic challenges, the challenges around land reform, and the unequal system between the formal and informal sector, and the many challenges we have. But if we look at this Center of Excellence for the past 7 years, they have been able to create extremely strong networks, more than 30 universities or research councils or partners, engagements with more than 30 different community of practices, meetings and conferences, also addressing the wicked problems within food security, and very importantly, representing 4 research chairs, 2 UNESCO chairs, and 4 centers of excellence, bringing that together with incredible outputs of peer-reviewed papers, more than 360 for this period and 400 postgrads. To me, this is a center that forms a critical network and contribute towards addressing resilient food systems. One aspect that I want to highlight was some of these key studies that's been done in collaboration with CIRAD and EU and FAO, was to really look at the key challenges and how we can include this. And the 2 I want to highlight is the point placing farmers and local food actors at the center of food systems, and further to promote local innovation and support centers and hubs. And that's really what we've been talking about today. My second last slide is just looking at some of our examples in South Africa, where we're looking at place-based research programs, where we are including multiple dimensions in our local food systems. We're integrating that. We are looking at the constraints of food flows, and we are developing transferable models in systems thinking. So these, to me, are extremely important programs. We also have at the University of Pretoria, the Arua Center of Excellence Sustainable Food Systems, which is an extremely important center in the African context, the African Research University Alliance. And we also have the FSNet Africa Food Systems Research Network. Both of these have already been presented at this conference. And I want to just highlight 1 or 2 interesting aspects. One interesting study by Dr. Nukutula was one of the projects looking at network analysis and the collaborative systems we currently have within the African context. I want to end my talk with just a reflection on 2 beautiful paintings. It was part of a series of paintings that was commissioned by the African Academy of Sciences. And I want to put a challenge out there to co-empower Africa, to make our dreams come true. We have to create a fair, free, just, equitable, equal opportunity, food secure future for all. And we cannot leave anyone behind. And with that, I want to thank you and just quote, the greatest threat to our planet is belief that someone else will save it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Liz, for very powerful presentation, and especially your closing your presentation with very good slides. Both of the slides, they were really giving good message. Thank you very much. And also highlighting the role of African Academy of Sciences also. So this was really appreciated. And I feel privileged to be that associate fellow of the African Academy of Science and also the TWS, and who are the co-organizer of this meeting. So thank you very much. So I think that we had really great session, and we can have a few questions from our panelists. I have seen that some of the panelists, they were already responding to the different questions. And I know that we have limited time, so I would like to request all of our speakers to just answer question in just 1 minute or so that we can take up a few questions, or at least 1 question to each panelist. Harold, I think if you are around, we have 1 question to you, though you answered several other questions. Harold, let me see if he is still around, or yes.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So, and you answered several questions. We are really appreciating your efforts. Thank you very much. Despite of your busy schedule, you are here. One question came from the Mauritius because they asked the question, would CGR be interested to partner with the Mauritius to focus towards food security and climate change?
Well, Ranjit, it's a straight question. We don't. We obviously would be happy to partner with Mauritius, but what I would like to say is to give them a clue on what we're doing. We have a country convener who's coordinating CGR's partnership in the IOC region, what we call the Madagascar and all those countries in that region. And I was there about a few months ago and meeting with the minister and trying to see that we could look at, have this kind of discussions with different categories of stakeholders in these countries. So we are we are working on that. And we're also having the support of various interested stakeholders like the World Bank, who are trying to fund some of the very, very interesting research and development programs to address challenges in those countries. So we're really open to that. And I'll inform the country convener to get in touch with me.
Thank you. And I also would like to thank you. And basically, when you highlighted about the product profiling in the CGR system, even before joining Murdoch, when I was working with ICRISAT and earlier Generation Challenge program, and you have been on the advisory panel. So thank you for all your support to me as also as an individual scientist, but of course, now your guidance to the CGR. So yes, you already highlighted that. I think this is very much now in the CGR system and many NARS in Africa, Asia, and they are following. So thank you very much, Harold. And I know that you may need to leave early. So thank you very much. We would like to thank you very much for all your contribution and guidance.
Thanks.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure.
Sure. Thank you. Now I would like to have one quick question to Chike. Chike, you already answered some of the question in the chat, but one question is that what are the unique strategy required across the world to implement GM crops and plant genetic materials? I can understand this is a bit contentious issue, but would like to hear your views on this particular point.
Okay, thank you very much, Rajiv. It's actually not contentious.
Okay.
Globally, we have the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. So the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety to the Convention on Biological Diversity provides the template. It provides the template for the safe use and transport of living modified organisms. And in a nutshell, what countries need to do is to develop a national biosafety framework. And a country that doesn't already have this, that could approach organizations such as FAO for help in setting up the framework. There are funding mechanisms that are available, for instance, from the Global Environment Facility or GEF. And another way to also do it is to learn from the experiences of other countries in the region. So having said that, that is why I say it is fairly simple. So there needs to be a framework and people need to abide by it. Regarding plant genetic resources, there is also a global framework, at least that is led by FAO, and that is under the auspices of the Commission on Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture. I mentioned that the team that I lead in FAO hosts the Secretariat for the Intergovernmental Working Group on Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture of the Commission. And through this normative process, there is the second global plan of action for plant genetic resources for food and agriculture that sets out 18 priority activities that countries implement in order to save their plant genetic resources and to use them sustainably. And again, if someone country needs assistance, that is why we are there. I'm happy to receive an email from the requester and then put the person in touch with the appropriate colleague who will be able to help. Thank you very much. Over.
Thank you, Chike. I think, yeah, that's very good. Thank you very much. There was some question to Jennifer. She already responded in the chat, and I think they can also contact Jennifer. We have one question to Ravi, and I think he already answered some of the question in chat box, but I also know the answer, but I will let Ravi to answer this question about APARI. Dr. Ravi Khetrapal, are you around?
Yes,
I
please.
hope so. Yes, please.
Yeah.
So, yes. So their question is about the APARI membership. Is it this only for the institutions or individuals as well? If so, how an individual can be engaged with APARI?
Well, APARI membership is either for the countries, for the NARS, or for the CGIR, like international organizations, for IRCA institutions, for universities, education sector, for the sub-regional fora, and now we have opened up to the private sector. So we do not have provide membership to the individuals. Like, it's not possible. We work with associations or big organizations. It's not easy to work with individual in our setup.
Yeah.
But we can always work with some individual, but we can't work with them on the membership basis.
So, yeah. So Ravi, sir, quickly, because we also have one question from Dr. Darshan Sharma from DPAD here in Australia related to this one. When you talked about the commitment to partnership, and this depends upon the value propositions. So they say that, have you tried this approach to entice potential collaborators?
Well, we have done it because we are dealing with a large number of global and regional projects. This is like the end result is you can't be choosy about partners when you do a project. You can't be choosy. You can just know why it is not happening. Like how you have to be careful next time. It's quite, this topic is a very sensitive topic and a most important topic, which is one of the SDGs, the partnership. And I think we have not talked much today about partnership per se. We are just saying where we have partner, how we have partner, how much we have partner. I think partnership per se needs a special focus. There are a lot of things we need to talk. I only spoke with personal experiences, but we really need to elevate the importance of partnership in general by knowing the basic mechanisms, principles, problem, and challenges.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I think, well, very good answer. And one question we would like to ask to Viv. Viv, this demand-led breeding is really a good concept. And I think as Chigoshi mentioned that they are also doing this in cassava, and now this is happening in many other CGR system NARS. So just in the context of that Africa, and you gave the example of Waki, Aki, Macquarie University, and many others one, would you like to give some suggestions for the young researchers who have just done their PhD now to secure some grants for undertaking R&D project? Because recently I was in another meeting in Cold Spring Harvard Laboratory. The question was that when these young researchers are coming, and majority of time R&D projects, they are going to established organizations or established research group leaders. So how to keep this young generation engaged with this important question of that food and nutrition security?
I would say it's actually at the heart of one of the principles, actually, and that is, and there's a couple of things related to it. It's one is know who you're serving. Really go and see, you need to find a way to go and see them to really understand what their problems are and what their needs are, so that when you have difficult days on your projects, you can look beyond that and think, well, actually you're doing it for very, very important reason. And connecting, I think, the science with the people down the chain that are going to actually value your work. And I think know who you're going to pass your your work too. What is the track by which, if it's knowledge creation, who will use the knowledge that you are generating, so that you know what you're doing I'm talking about as an applied scientist now, is actually going to make a difference.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very well. Yeah. And thank you very much. We would like to have one question to Chigosi, and I think you answered several questions, but it seems your talk has created a lot of interest in cassava germplasm that I was following up this chat. So now they are asking that if some other countries would like to evaluate, and this question is coming from another friend, Bavek from Iran, and he says if you would like to evaluate the cassava germplasm, in this particular case in Iran, but in many other countries, as a climate resilient crops, what will be your suggestion? Or so some idea about that?
Right. I mean, cassava is very good for those kind of dry places. And I mean, there's genetic variability or genetic variation for its response to drought. We clearly have varieties that have thrived and given good yields in dry areas where there is even sudden drought at the wrong timing of the plant. So it's all going to be geographic because of the logistics involved. We will say we can do that based on geography. So if you are going to be from Asia, Southeast Asia, Iran, I can make the connection. I've dropped my contact in the chat box, and you can contact me. I'll link you up with the right partners. Like, for example, the Colombian International Center for Tropical Agriculture will be the right plug for that. But I mean, we can send you from Nigeria or from Uganda, but I think for that Asia, but for Africa, just send to me and I'll make that happen through IITA. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chigosi. And I think we can have one question quickly to Liz. You mentioned about the development of transferable models for food system planning. I think this is very important, which can be used by the local governments and other stakeholders. Can you give some little bit, elaborate this topic, that how this can be done? So so Liz?
Yeah, I think it's extremely important to have the balance between local food systems, supporting that, expanding it, because that gives you the resilience in your system, the stability. If we look at during the COVID disruptions and inability to move food globally, we were really all looking inwards and looking at our local food supplies and food systems and our ability to not only produce but store and distribute locally. So that first and foremost, to me, should be a key focus for any country, to stabilize those rural connections, strengthen it, and ensure that we are able to produce enough food in a regional context. My second point is to invest in the human capacity, human capital context, and we have to create a pipeline and a pathway. And if I say a pipeline, we need to identify young people to go into agriculture and food production and processing and distribution. They need to understand food systems. But then we need to nurture them and empower them to go into a career pathway. And we often leave them at a PhD level or a postdoctoral level. We need to provide them that support system to ensure that this young emerging scientists will be the leaders of tomorrow. And a classic example is the FSNet. It was presented yesterday. The FSNet program to invest in postdoctoral fellows. And I think that's a very important investment opportunity for all of us. Thank you.
Murdoch, so I will respond to that one. There was a question that when we are talking about food security and also that's to feed the billions and sustainable intensification of agri-food systems and to combat climate change, what should be the role of internationally renowned universities like Murdoch? So this is a very particular question, but I think universities like Murdoch, and here we are having for Agriculture Food Futures Institute, we got 3 centers, Center for Crop and Food Innovation, which I lead, another center for the farming system, and another 3rd center is for Center for Animal Production. And like Murdoch, there are many other universities in Australia who are also having the Agriculture Research Institute. And we have, as we've mentioned, we have ACIR, Australian Council for International Agriculture Research, also Crawford Fund, and many other organizations, including GRDC. So I think together with these organizations, these universities or those, they are already undertaking several projects in many countries in Asia. And now we are also we also have one other project from the ACIR in Africa as well, which Dr. Wallace Cowling is leading, and I'm also on the advisory board. So I think there are many examples like that one. And from the Murdoch University and in my role as an international chair for agriculture and food security, I'm very much interested to continue to expand our activities in this space. So this is my view. Second quick question I would like to answer, that there was question from Indian perspective. They say that there are now some private universities in addition to the public universities. They're talking about inclusion of molecular methods and digital tools, that how they can collaborate. And I think my response to this particular point is that, yes, I think there is, in India, they are moving ahead now to having this partnership with the private sector and public sector. So you please interact with those key research organizations in India, like including Indian Agriculture Research Institute or many other universities, or CGR Research Institute like ICRISAT, which are in India, or other organizations. And definitely they will be very excited to help you. So I think you please go ahead. Lastly, although we don't have time, but I would like to take this question, because this question is coming from another friend of mine, Dr. Francis Ogovania. And he's asking that we would like to hear the view of the panel on the role of national governments in strengthening institutional capacity, establishment of infrastructure, as well as commitment to long-term and sustained investment to accelerate transform African agriculture and achieve food security. Thank you, Francis. I know in Canberra this should be very late, but you are still awake. So this shows your commitment to international agriculture as well. And I think instead of asking everybody, maybe I can ask Chike, coming from FAO. What do you think, Chike, about this particular question for Francis? And those of you who don't know, Francis Ogovania is coming from the Grain Research Development Corporation in Australia, very important organization for Australian agriculture here. Francis, Chike, would you like to comment on this particular point?
Yes, Rajiv, thanks for the opportunity to speak to this. We are talking about partnerships today. So achieving food security and nutrition, especially for places where the solutions seem to have been elusive, will require partnerships. However, for those partnerships to work, there has to be a political will. The national government has to decide that enough is enough. It's our responsibility to feed our people, and then put in place the enabling environment for whatever investments are being made to be able to flourish. So in a nutshell, Francis, the national governments should be leading. And, and we know this in every country where food security and nutrition has been addressed, both in the recent past and historically, the governments have always led. Our director general is from China, and he likes to give these examples of how the agricultural and food system of the country was transformed in the last 4 decades or so. Rajiv, in your native India, it's also the same story. We can also mention Brazil and several other countries. The Green Revolution would not have worked if the governments of India and Pakistan were not ready to adopt the technologies and provide the enablement for the farmers who adopted those technologies to be able to make money from planting the crop. So in a nutshell, yes, there will be partnerships, but the governments have to prioritize food security and nutrition and say, yes, it is time to end hunger and malnutrition. Then every other thing will fall into place. Thank you. Over.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chike, for answering very elegantly. And I think I would also like to mention that I think that commitment from the state government is very, very much required. And I think this is already happening. And wherever countries, they showed their support and commitment, we have seen that how agriculture has contributed to improve the livelihood of the smallholder farmers. So I think this is very good. Thank you very much, Chike. Thank you very much, Francis. I think we would like to close this session because we are already beyond time. But before that, I think we had great discussions. I don't want to spend a lot of time in that summarizing, but would like to mention this was very clear from all that panelists and also the discussion that partnership is very much required. And partnership is required in the different phases, starting from the discovery, implementation, development, extension. So we need to have the different kind of partners. And when we talk about these different kind of partners, then I think equal value partnership is very much required for the success of any initiative or the project. Because if we are having that, and we need to have this ownership on these partnerships. So I think this is another thing. We also had some discussion about this purpose-based partnership, value proposition. So I think these are some key words that when we are talking about dealing or tackling the bigger issues in international agriculture, different kind of stakeholders are required. And we talked today, international organizations like FAO, CGIAR, major organizations in Africa like AGRF, AGRA, or in Asia, for instance, APARI, and then many national programs across the different countries, Advanced Research Institute, including Cornell University, for instance, universities in Australia, Europe, and all over the places. And nowadays we are having these farmer progressive organizations, and we need to have the voice of the farmers also. And also we discussed that role of the investors, the funders from the international organizations and also in the different countries. So I think we are talking the partnership in that bigger way, where each and every stakeholders plays very important role from the conceptualization towards implementation in all the different areas. So I think we had really great session and at this stage, and I would like to thank all the partners once again, all the panelists for great job. Please join me in thanking all the panelists. Despite of their busy schedules, they could come here, they share their views. I would like to avail this opportunity to thank all the participants and also all the co-organizers and organizers, including Murdoch University, Food Futures Institute, Center for Crop and Food Innovation, UNESCO, the World Academy of Sciences, the African Academy of Sciences, Australia Africa Universities Network, and APARI. And of course, the World Food Prize Foundation. They provided us this opportunity to organize this important session. Several people played a key role in organizing this session. Here, I would like to mention Ms. Anu Chitkineni, Senior Science Manager from the Center for Crop and Food Innovation, for working hard for several weeks and having the correspondences with large number of people around the world. So thank you very much, Anu. We would like to thank Natalie Widner from the World Food Prize Foundation. She played very key role to engage us in this important activity. And of course, all the co-organizers, but would like to mention especially name of Pooja Mathur and Vishwanath Saha from APARI. Pooja, you have done a great work with us to organize this session. And I'm sure that Dr. Ravi Khetrapal is going to give some bonus or enhance your salary now after this session. He's just smiling, so I'm considering this as positive news. Anyway, jokes apart, but also Mr. Vishwanath Saha, you have done a wonderful job from APARI for both of you. Vanika Garg from my own labs, he is postdoctoral fellow, but doing great work, and Prasad Bajaj, who is my old friend, and many other colleagues and friends who have done a wonderful job to organize this session. So thank you very much, and thanks all the participants. They came from the different parts of the world, from the more than 55 countries. There are some of them, they are still hanged or still here. So thank you very much. With these words, that with the partnership, we will continue to contribute to international agriculture with the motto, nobody left hungry. So I think, and we can do it. So with these words, thank you very much once again. Keep on doing great work to improve the international agriculture and agriculture in your own countries, in your own areas. Thank you. Thank you once again. And have a great evening, great day, good night. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well done, Rajiv.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You and your
Well
team.
done, Rajiv, as always.
Thanks. So nice of you. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.